class. We're going to be focusing on those people because that's what we do in a class like this, especially in art, right? We take a look at the people that are actually interested and we give them the time and the space. So we're going to check out these 3 assignments. Then we'll go ahead and do our master study. I'll go ahead and I'll copy this into the chat right now. That way you guys have a copy of it. And we're doing a little bit more of that mannequin work, but I'm also going to teach you like 3 important things for the figure that you'll see a lot in figure drawing, and also you'll see a lot in character design. So we'll talk about that. Let's go ahead and begin with our critique. Start with Zaya, because we tend to beat up Zaya a lot. We tend to put her at the end, so we got to put her at the beginning. Make sure she's feeling solid. This is a great picture. Sports, athletics, those are all really nice things to look at for doing mannequin and study of human life drawing, things like that. So yeah, feeling very good about this piece for sure. Let's go ahead and Zaya, let's say, you know, we've done a couple weeks now of figure. And of course, we've been talking about figure in class for maybe even like 4 or 5 classes at this point. So what's left to say is, you know, as we like to often say or ask, what are you feeling at this point that is going successful? Some things are going great with your figure drawing. What are some things that you're like continuing to push? Your knowledge is looking great. The knowledge in this is looking really nice. So I'm curious to hear, what are some of those challenges?
So the main challenge for me, honestly, was like the torso and like the proportion of the torso compared to, for example, the shoulders and the waist. So how much space is there between the, you know, those shoulders and the waist, because they're not like parallel to each other, they're actually going in opposite directions. So that was a bit tough.
Yeah.
Especially as there is kind of somewhat a tiny bit of an angle at the waist. And so finding out also at what angle the body is twisted was pretty tough, as it is kind of not going around, but it's going from very front facing to like side to the side facing.
Yeah.
So twist a little bit with the position of the shoulders and the arms. So that was definitely very tough.
Yeah, it's a really hard pose, and it's a prime example of like how all these pieces of the body can be doing all kinds of different things. So yeah, it's like the head's doing something, the chest is doing something, the pelvis is doing something. You know, we even have these moments like right here. I think I tease you, of course, but I was picking on you last time. Remember about like the in class drawing about like whether something goes towards us or away. This is a really challenging one. It's really hard to tell that it's like barely going away. And you did that well. You have that nice little volume right there. You have this one coming towards, so that looks great. Yeah, it's a wonderful, truly a wonderful drawing, wonderful pose, very challenging. Well, this stuff is very interesting where you're starting to see underneath someone and trying to get that down plane, that lower facing plane. One of my favorite things I'm going to bring up in a couple of people's drawings is your inclusion of what's called the latissimus dorsi. It's just a big word for what we call like lats, which are like these big muscles, almost like wings in our back that connect to our rib cage. And so a lot of students will do this. They'll kind of do just the rib cage and they'll leave that back part off. And so that was a really good inclusion. Yeah, overall, feeling pretty good, truly. Like I'm kind of looking at the proportion of it. Yeah, very nice proportion. I was trying to see if this was like a little bit, could be like a touch longer, but not really. Maybe like barely, but yeah, not really worth bringing up. Yeah, I like these joints. This stuff looks nice. Yeah, I will also commend you. This is a really, in my opinion, this is a really smart language to get into, which is to make your pelvis. I've been teaching this as a bowl, which is very, very acceptable. Like it's a good one. You're doing more of what I'd call almost like the underwear kind of idea, where it kind of has this sort of like underwear shape like this. And then you're starting the thigh a little bit lower. I like that a lot because that's a lot of how it would actually bend. Like if you had that pelvis and then that leg was coming towards us, this part would be kind of like a, for lack of a better word, like meat. You know, it's muscle, of course, but yeah, it's like more meat. So this is a very smart wise decision to start getting into this kind of language versus connecting it all the way up here. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going great. I think the proportion is your vibe, kind of like long and cool and stuff, which is good. Do you have any direct questions? Anything you want help on? Anything that you want some tips on? Nope.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, if you have any criticism, go ahead.
Yeah. Again, a lot of the proportion feels really good. One very minor thing, and I hesitate to bring this up because I actually don't want it to come off like even as critique. It's more just like food for thought. Is these athletes, in this case, what we would consider like female skeleton, right? Female skeleton athlete. They can, of course, get quite muscular. Their body type can be, very different, let's say, from someone who's unathletic, right, as female body type. And so the only like really minor critique would be, I could picture this being just a touch more narrow, like maybe bring this in just a little bit more, because the current look of it is a little more masculine skeleton. And you can see why I'm kind of like towing a thin line here, because again, you can actually bulk up, of course, men, women, all the above can bulk up to have appearances, but the bone structure of her, like how her ribs look in your model, feel a little bit more male because it's a wider rib cage. And that female rib cage is usually a little bit more narrow. So as an example, we'll do this in black. Here's like her rib cage. What gives her a really great athletic body, especially for this discussion we're having about like male to female biology, male to female skeleton, is she does have like a very strong shoulder, right? Very strong deltoid. Here's that lat. Come over here, my one concern would be that this is just starting to feel a little bit broad, like starting to feel really, really wide, which is a bit more male, bit more masculine. That'd be like the only thing. When I first look at your mannequin, like if I wasn't looking at the photo, I think is a little bit more of like a male skeleton. So that's one of the only things that I would pick up on. But of course, I love that you were pushing for that musculature. You're trying to show like that athletic body and kind of making it feel broad. And again, like you can find a lot of female skeleton athletes looking broader because they have bigger shoulder muscles and things, but of course their bones are the same. That's one of the more interesting body type ideas. Let me see, body skeleton, give me a second. One of the most interesting things that I'm talking about with everyone, let me find a decent picture for this. I'm so close. Oh, here's a great picture. I'm trying to find something that looks good. Sorry, this is actually here we go. I want to make sure I find a good, appropriate picture. It took me a long time in figure drawing to understand this idea that just because someone is like they're very muscular, I don't want to say musculature, excuse me, they're very muscular. They might have like a larger body type. It doesn't change your skeleton. Like the person with a lot of muscle mass and the person who has a bigger body type, which those two kind of go in the same direction if you think about it. You could stack a bunch of muscle, you look really huge, you're male or female skeleton, you're like really big looking. You could have a bigger body type, right? But what's interesting is that fluctuation of weight or muscle doesn't change your bones. So the whole story I'm getting at is that just because your perimeter, like your body type is larger, you have larger body type, you have larger muscle, your rib cage is the same. People who are larger body types don't necessarily have like bigger rib cages. They do if they're like a literal, giant 7-foot person or something. Of course, theirs are quote unquote bigger. But it's funny how it doesn't like stretch to the surface. So muscle, body fat, things like that, they don't impact your bones. So this person, let's say, is a larger body type, can be this body type. They could be a lower weight and their body would wrap around like this. It doesn't change the bone, which is interesting. So long story short, what I'm getting at is when you all draw body types, you draw muscles, things like that, you'll stack muscle on top of bone, right? You'll make bigger muscles potentially on the bone, but that inner bone largely is the same size. It kind of stays like the same. Great job. Really good work. Great inspiration or great discussion. I'm actually gonna go to Rain because also as I put Zaya at the end, sometimes I feel like I put Rain at the end. So no one will be our end for the day. If that's okay, Nolan, you're our bookend for the day. So let's go to Rain real fast. Rain, I did see your message. Apologies for not catching that earlier about the choice of picture. But that said, I do really like what you did for your picture here. This looks great. So Rain, I'm really enjoying watching you do some figure drawing because I can tell you have a comfort with it. Like you seem like you're doing pretty well with it. And then also I can tell there's little things that you're learning. So what are you learning right now in figure drawing? Like what's kind of at the front of your mind with learning stuff? Oh, cool. So Rain was saying I have one of those little wooden people, and that's what I mainly used. Yeah, let me grab it's all the way back here now. Yeah, you can do the little wooden mannequin. Actually, I had one more thing. Let me grab it. I'm in my big studio room. I can just grab things across the way. So yeah, here's an example of like a wooden hand, right? So this is like that wooden mannequin idea. And then these are really great as well. You'll actually see these advertised on even like Instagram, TikTok, like Twitter, like social media, and they're not bad. They're like a little bit pricey. I think they're like 40, 50 bucks, but they're very effective. They're good for checking out the different pieces of the body, things like that. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that you have one of those little mannequins. I'm reading your chat real fast. Ray was saying how the body goes around the bones, mainly with the arms and legs. Alex Zai is saying there's effective transitions. This isn't going a step too far overworked, right? That's great. So yeah, Rain was saying how the body's going around bones, mainly with arms and legs. Let's take a second. This is the point of the critique, is to do like a little bit of, lesson on top of these things. Let's take a second. We'll actually do it on this woman right here to show some of the bone behavior for someone like this. Oh, thanks. And then yeah, Rain's actually putting, here's the one used if anyone wants it. Yeah, these Rain, feel free if you feel comfortable, you can always talk about like your purchase. But as far as I know, these are very affordable. You can buy these for sometimes like $10, I don't like to talk about money. I know we all have different money situations. $10 can be a lot to many people. There's been times in my life where $10 was a lot of money. But yeah, that said, on the scale of like models, that's a little bit more affordable, the wooden model. They can be found on it's a hand-me-down. Guys, a hand-me-down. Yeah, and actually if you go to like even a Goodwill or something, you can find them. Those are the more affordable models, and then stuff like this on the camera. These start to get into like the $100 range, like $100, $200 even. Sometimes you get like these really detailed ones. But for the sake of our class, or like what we're doing in our class, those wooden ones are fine. You still very sister, I like that. Okay, so yeah, let's have a quick look at some bones based on Rain's question. Arm and leg bones, I specifically would really like to look at those are good arm and leg bones, especially those leg ones. I feel like that's where it gets really interesting for people, is like how the leg actually connects. So we do this bowl kind of shape. And actually I have a picture of a pelvis. There's like a diagram on my wall over here of a skeleton. And so a real pelvis, like a real bone for your hips, looks more like this. It kind of dips lower. Very, again, like I can't stress that. I think this stuff's cool. Very fascinating that the male to female skeleton is going to look different. So as an example, in the pelvis, there's almost this like mask kind of shape. It actually looks kind of like eyes like this in your pelvis. And it's a little bit wider for the female skeleton than it is for the male. Then you have these two little openings right here. The transition from the hip to the leg is hard for me, or like the pelvis. Yeah. Oh, here's a great thing to bring up for that. So if I'm hearing this correctly, Rain is saying the transition from the hip, maybe like where this part kind of starts around here, to the leg can be a little bit tricky. And I think I see that over here, especially with like how these shapes look and how you did these kind of circles here. So here's what's actually happening, and then I'll draw like a simple version of it. So what's actually happening is you have the longest bone, I believe the longest bone in your body, which is called your femur. So that's your very big, strong leg bone. This is I don't know if anyone's broken a bone in here, but this is an extremely hard bone to break. And if you break it, it's very, very painful. I've never broken my femur, but just from hearsay, it's one of the biggest bones in our body. I think it's technically the biggest bone, because if you think about like your pelvis, and especially your ribs are actually made of rib bones, right? It's like made of pieces. So the femur is this really big, long bone. Then you have your kneecap. And then just like your arm, this is where our bodies are so weird because they basically do the same thing arm to leg. Just like your arm, your leg has two bones. It has a shin bone. I don't want to throw too many words. If you guys like words, I'll throw the words, but I don't want to confuse you. So you have the shin bone, and then you have this kind of tinier bone on the side. And this is what makes your ankle are two bones. So for some reason you can, if you can touch your ankle right now, if you can think about it, if you touch the inside of your ankle, so I mean like the inside of your foot, I'm doing that right now, that's your shin bone, like the big bone in the front. If you touch the outside of your ankle, this is the one that's a little bit lower. That's a smaller bone called a fibula. So it's actually two separate bones making the ankle. Just like I think it was in this class, I forgot which class, it might have been this one where I was asking what your elbow is, right? And your elbow is actually a small bone that goes from your elbow to your wrist near your pinky. So those are the bones. Now to get to this transition stuff, if this was your hip, so this is like the outside of your hip, this gal's perfect because she's wearing kind of like this little, almost like yoga outfit. So it fits her body really tight. It's nice to see like the body form. What I would say students usually confuse or mess up is if this is your hips, this is your leg bone, let's say, they just kind of get lost in this area. They kind of get lost on like, well, where does it like point out? Where does it stick out? And so what's happening is that your hips stick out as far as this piece of your leg bone. So I mean, like that's like what we'd call the peak, or like the farthest point of your leg is right there near your hips and near the bottom of your pelvis. And then it'll start to come down or fall down into your thigh. So this would be a really important, I'm gonna put like a star on it, really important little mark to think about. So we come back over here. And what I would say to your mannequin drawing, Rain, is especially like the literal wooden mannequin, is this reminds me a lot, and this is a good thing. This reminds me a lot of when you're an adolescent or you're growing up, because of course your body's growing and stuff, and you're even like putting on, I mean this in a good way, you're putting on more like body and volume, like even weight or muscle. So we would say, of course, when we look at children, that they're kind of like sometimes very lean looking, right? They're very like straight looking. They don't have like a lot of hip or curve. So that's what this reminds me of, is it kind of feels more like a younger body type. But to figure out the way this works, you'd probably want to pop that hip a little farther out. And then the main thing that I think your wooden mannequin is very cool, but the main thing that kind of can be tricky in terms of what's teaching you is that this idea, like your hips and then this connection here, I'm not saying this in a bad way, would be like totally incorrect, like what our actual bones do. It's great for the mannequin. It kind of like works for that little toy or whatever. But what's really happening is what's happening over here. So the simple way again would be have the bowl, your legs stick out or stick into it at an angle, and then they come down. So even though like this gal, for instance, we would say to her, hey, I want you to stand straight up and down. And she is, the way that her bones actually look would look something like this. Here's her pelvis. Here's her femur, that leg bone, it comes out, and then it comes down at an angle. Here's the femur. Here's her kneecap. We have two bones. We have a thicker shin bone, and then a small one on the side. I don't like to throw vocabulary, but I have some sharp people in here that like this stuff. So I'll tell you right now that this is what's called your tibia. And this is called your fibula. And then that's your femur. So yeah, the transition for your legs, I would personally do more of the bowl or, even like the underwear that Zaya is doing, which is also really great, where you kind of do like a tighter one, almost like an underwear shape like that. Draw that bone coming out and going in like that. Oh, I like that. Zaya says I call them tib and fib, like they're brothers. Yeah, this is what we call, don't let me get this wrong. I'm not always a huge English person, but it's called a mnemonic device, which means when you have like a little thing that helps you memorize. I'll tell you quickly, how I memorize these is T for top, as in it's like the top bone. And then the F I think of as fine, meaning like it's very delicate and fine. It's like the more delicate bone of the leg bone. So that's how I remember it. So yeah, a little bit of a skeletal lesson. I don't mean to go on too much of a tangent there, but yeah, be careful of that. It's cool. It works pretty well, but try more of this idea where these sticks or these bones like come out the sides, go back in. I really respect the way that you draw, Rain. Like you have a style that, works for you, and I can tell that it's really effective. And so what Zaya was doing, just so you know, and I'm kind of riffing on Zaya's thing, is Rain, you did kind of like this little almost like skirt shape, which is cool. And you could pair that or combo that like this. You could do the skirt shape, do kind of like the little underwear idea, kind of like this, and then draw those thighs coming off like that. Here's the kneecaps. For me, that'd be a great way to think about it too. So this is me over here on the right. I'm more like skeletal as an artist. I do more like bone work, but I like your skirt thing going on here. So you could also turn it more into like this on the left. Does that answer your question, or does that give you a little bit more to think about, Rain? Yes. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, very good. Also, really, really good work. I like your steps, by the way. I like you showing us this. And yeah, for someone who I've just started working with you, Rain, I'm seeing more of your work. I'm excited to see you do more figure work because it's looking cool. I can tell you're kind of learning along with us, which is great. I really like seeing it. Okay, for our master study, last but certainly not least, Mr. Nolan. So sorry, Nolan, that took a minute to get to yours. Great pose, first of all, fantastic reference picture. Yeah, just so much good stuff going on, good bend. I love all the character and like the hands and the feet. This would be a great study just for even hands and feet. Beautiful like musculature, amazing look at like the shoulder muscles. So let's go ahead and hit you with one of those similar questions about what's working for you right now, figure drawing. What do you think is like clicking each time that you draw figures? Oh, I'm so sorry, Nolan. It looks like you're still having a mic problem. I can't hear you, unfortunately. I don't know if Zaya can confirm that if she didn't hear anything. You didn't hear anything? Okay. Yeah, so sorry. I don't want to be frustrating, Nolan. Feel free to type if you want. You can type on there and I'll read it. Oh, so Nolan says, so the limbs in the head, you're saying are like, what kind of clicks? Those things are kind of like working or clicking a little bit. Okay, and then what's giving you some demons? Like what's giving you some trouble as you work on the figure? So yeah, Nolan's saying the limbs in the head working very well. I agree. Usually that makes sense too, because those are what we look at a lot. It's kind of like the more focused storytelling, be like the limbs in the head. I usually think I'll let Nolan type for a second on what's giving him some troubles, but usually for me, it's the torso stuff, right? This is less, yeah, the feet, hands, and some of the torso. Yeah, again, definitely makes sense that that's where some of that challenge comes in. What I would say with the torso right now is there could be like a little bit more lean. That's okay. Like it could just be pushed a little bit more. But like I talked about with Zaya's work, what I'm more interested in seeing, like Zaya says that back leg is super nice. Yeah, you did a great job breaking this leg down, especially showing us this kind of volume right here. And the rear looks really good. Like the rear's got a nice shape. Yeah, like the angle of the leg is great. I agree. Even the foot, was going in a good direction. Like I encouraged on Zaya's drawing, Nolan, I think the one thing that's missing a little bit from your piece, besides that little bit of bend, is maybe a little more of the kind of like sides of these shapes. Let me try drawing red, so sorry. So as an example, like a little bit more of this hip. And then this is looking pretty good, but I feel like there's a piece missing right here truly, or like a little bit more of that lat, as we called it, which is just like these big muscles that are kind of like wings on the back of our body. I don't want to get too hardcore into anatomy stuff today, but I'll just show you because it's not fair to say the word and not show it to you. One second. Here we go. Yeah, so this is our latissimus. It's like this big kind of like wing back here. This is another huge muscle, right? This is our trapezius. That's this like thing when you rub your neck right there. So yeah, I think for you as you're learning, Nolan, it's like just some of these little transition kind of shapes, like these little transition kind of muscles showing a little bit more of the side. This is a pretty fascinating thing because this is the guy's pelvis. That's like his hip right there that's really popping out. So I agree with everything you said. I think your hands, or excuse me, your heads and like the limbs and stuff are looking good. Hands and feet definitely a little bit harder. These characters are really hard to kind of figure out, especially stuff like that. And then just some of that transition. I'm gonna put a thing right there, like transition. Just those like transition muscles. I think you'll start to notice more and more. It gives the figure like literally more transition, also more like side, kind of like gives it more dimension. Rain was saying, I really like the point of the lower leg and the forearms. Oh, thanks for saying that, Rain. That's a great point, that these are really nice forearms where you kind of identified that larger kind of bundle of muscle in the top of the forearm, and then it gets a little bit more narrow, right? And you see that on here, which is great. You see it there, you see it there. I'm going to show you one more thing about that point right there. I've actually been teaching the traditional drawing class, the drawing career practice. We've been teaching them figure drawing. So I gotta admit that I'm kind of like cross-pollinating, meaning like I'm forgetting sometimes if I said this to both classes or just this class, vice versa. But I had brought up in one of the classes, maybe this one, I brought this idea that if this is your hips, here's your rib cage, like your arm. Here's your leg, here's your rear. Yeah, like Rand's saying the head's really good. It is. Yeah, the turn in the head, like showing that back muscle, and then this piece right here under the chin. Fantastic. Really, really good stuff. Super nice. So the body has a lot of alternating patterns, which is amazing. It basically goes curve, straight, curve, straight. So it curves, it goes straight, it curves for your rear end, right? It goes straight for the back of your thigh. The opposite side of your body will do the opposite, which is also crazy. It's straight. This is actually, even though this curves as our as our rib cage, we call it straight because of our sternum and our bone. So it's straight. Then you have your belly curve. Then it goes back to being straight, which is right at your pelvis and your hips. Then it curves because of your thigh, your thick thigh muscle, straight. So your body just does this stuff, and it's like I mean this in a cool way. It's like predictable. It's like it basically just goes curve straight, curve straight, curve straight on either side. And then similar things will happen with your limbs that Nolan did with the arm, which is you'll notice that your forearm, so here's your elbow. You'll notice that your forearm is a little bit beefier, like a little bit rounder in the top of it. So like right here, right? Then it gets like straighter technically up here. So this is beefier right here, if you see the little camera. And then it gets straighter as it gets towards your wrist. So there's your wrist. Your wrist is actually even a little bit more of like a box shape. Here's your palm, your thumb, fingers. So you'll see it on your arm. You'll see curve at the top, straighter And then what's really funny to wrap this up is, what does that look exactly like, or what does the exact same thing? Your lower leg. You have your calf muscle, then you have your shin. Here's your foot coming in. Here's your knee. So your leg does the same thing. It looks curved, then it gets a little more straight. And another way to look at it is it's kind of like meat, bone, meat, bone. Something's a little bit more meaty, something is a little more bone. Something's a little more meaty, something's a little more bone. And this ties into also something that in figure drawing, I've played with a little bit. I mean, like I've taught it to my older students, which is your arm and your leg are like basically the same thing if you think about it. And with these patterns as well as the bones and all the above. So yeah, really good stuff to see those places that you're doing strong in, Nolan. It's great to see those moments that you're kind of learning a little bit more about. I think if I had to put one word on it, it'd be the transition stuff is what you'll continue to push a little bit. And then, yeah, of course, as always, especially with your character work, let me know if you have specific questions. I want to move on because I know we're taking a bit for critique. But yeah, for the hands and the feet and stuff, we might have to do a little demo of that, like a little random day that we do some hands and feet stuff. Especially feet get really neglected, but they're very important, especially for how they hit the ground. Good stuff. Very good work. Great job. Thanks so much, everyone submitted. Okay, let's do a quick little master study of this. I highly encourage you to draw along or draw it as well. And you can show me at the end or copy paste it if you'd like. I'm going to put this into the chat. Oop, here we go. Gosh, I gotta be honest, I'm having a weird time. For some reason, I'm not copy pasting stuff correctly. So give me 2 seconds. I'm going to, let me try this one more time. Well, I think I put it in the chat and I also put it in our team chat. Let me see. Yeah, I don't know why my screenshot's not working right now. Give me 1 second. Okay. I'm gonna try it one more time. Oof, my copy paste isn't working. That's okay, because I think I could also just find the picture really fast. Give me 1 second. Let's see. Try to find it. There we go. Okay. I'm gonna try to copy this link. Okay, that worked. Okay, so sorry. I don't know why that wasn't working on my end. So there's a link in the chat to the artwork. It's actually the artwork without the drawings on top, so that might look a little bit better. I'm also putting it into the Teams chat, our Teams class chat, so you'll see it in there as well. Okay. So the idea with this is we're going to do a little mannequin of it, but I'm going to tell you 3 interesting things about this pose that you see a lot in character design and you see a lot in figure drawing as well. So just some additional tips before we, of course, get to our fabric stuff, which we'll wrap up the day just showing a little bit of preview of what's going to come on Friday with the fabric work. Okay, so again, if you have that picture and you're able to draw, I encourage you to draw a mannequin as well. You can share it with us towards the end of class. We're going to take just about 10 minutes to talk about this little master study idea. So 3 things that you see a lot in figure drawing, but especially in character design. The first one would be in character design. We'll put character design here. You will often see a perspective change in a character. And so what that means is you will often see the perspective change from looking up on the head to looking down on the feet. So as an example, when we look up here, we are looking up on this person's face. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't 1000% know. I think this is it's like Negasonic, right? From Deadpool, I believe, if I remember correctly, his character. I'm not a big X-Men and some of that Marvel stuff. I don't know for sure. But yeah, I want to say that's who this character is supposed to be. But we're technically looking up on this character's head. So I mean, like our perspective is we're looking up towards the character. But by the time we get down here to the feet, we're actually looking down on them in perspective. So they have a perspective kind of like this, where they're being looked down on. So for y'all that are doing character design, and when you look at photos, things like that, that's an important thing to note, is that you often have the perspective change a little bit. So what that would look like is you might have a drawing of a character where you're looking up or higher on their face. Draw a quick little mannequin. And then by the time you get down to their feet, you are looking down on their feet. Now let's have a quick little quiz about looking up on someone's head. And we're going to ask Mia. Mia, describe to us some of the ideas for how it would look to look up on someone's head. Like, we can draw that, of course, we can see it visually, but how would you describe how it looks when you're looking up on someone's head?
How would I describe that? Let's see. Well, you can imagine the face as sort of like a cylinder, right?
Mhm.
So when you look up, you're now looking at the bottom of every feature. So, like you kind of see, like the bottom of the nose,
Mhm.
and the ears are on the side of the head, right? So they move down, which is a good like way to indicate. It's like a cheat code, I guess.
Mhm.
The let's see, like from like the midpoint, every feature kind of moves closer to like visually like the top of the face, and the bottom of the face will look more will look bigger because it's closer to you from that angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the kind of things I think about, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice answer, especially the ear. I was kind of hoping you'd say, because that's one of my favorite clues about someone's face being pitched higher or looking up. So to quickly show this, it was a very nice answer for Mia. We have, in normal perspective, like normally looking at someone, you would see this. You'd see their ear. Let's just do very fast eyes. Their eyes, their nose. Make that a little bit more round. And of course, their mouth. So here's kind of like our what we call normal perspective. We're looking at the person like straight on. And then what Mia was describing was, as soon as you start to look up on someone's head, and when we keep saying that, what we mean is that you're kind of lower than the person. You're looking up. Your head is literally, if you look at my little camera, you're turning your head up and looking up at them. If you look up at someone, you start to notice that their features appear higher up on the head. So, and Mia also used a really nice term. She said kind of like the middle, like if you imagine the middle of someone's head. So we normally have a middle like that, let's say. The middle, you'd start to notice that the features look much higher than the middle. And then my favorite one that Mia brought up, it's one of my absolute favorite clues, is the ear will start to look lower. It'll kind of appear lower because the person's tilting or pitching their head up. And then finally, a lot of stuff was being said that was so true, which is you're looking at the bottom of things. So you can see the bottom of someone's nose. You can see more of the bottom of their chin. And then, of course, like Mia was saying about the middle changing, you actually see less of the top of their head. So you see less the top of their head, more of the bottom of their head as you look up on them. We can even make that a little bit more moved up. So we come back over here. And that's why we say we're looking up on this person, because boom, their ears are so low. They're like inside of their nose, they're actually below their lips. This couldn't be further from the reality of how our face looks, where your ear tends to line up with the bottom of your nose. It actually tends to line up a little bit with your brow. So yeah, we want to make, in character designer, we want to look out for this, that we do see some different perspectives. We see people change in perspective. Specifically that we look up on their head and we will often look down on their feet. So I'll finish this little person real fast. There's a little bit of that thigh. Now, last thing, for a few of you that are doing perspective, I mean, like you're playing a little with this, that would imply that if you understand horizon line, you're getting a little bit into that the figure's horizon line usually somewhere like around the waist. So usually like for characters like this, the artist will kind of imagine the horizon being about here. So everything above this line, you're looking up on, everything on this line, you're looking down on. So keep that in mind, especially for, this is, by the way, Hipchum Habchi. I was just saying casually to Zaya at the beginning of class, I took class with Habchi recently and got some cool advice, some cool tips from him. But yeah, he's a pretty well-known riot artist for a very long time now. He does his own work, if I remember right. I think he works in his own studio. So fact number one, or interesting thing number one, would be you will see perspective change across the entire person's figure. I'm going to take 2 seconds. I want to see if anyone's, like even Nolan's piece has that going on. Yeah, a little bit. It's kind of tricky with Nolan's because of the tilts. This is actually a great example of this picture. I unfortunately drew all over it. I like put stuff all over it, but this picture actually has the exact concept we're talking about, the one that Rain used from the homework, which is you can see under this figure's chin, you can see under their chin, you're looking up on their features. Mia did also use a good term. She said like a cylinder. You imagine kind of like a cylinder shape like this, and it's curving up. So we're actually looking up on this person's face and then looking down on their feet. So this person also has that perspective change. Something to keep in mind again when you're looking at figures and especially characters. Now I see our time, so I'm just going to talk about one final thing, which would be, it would be nice to teach everyone the term, a lot of vocabulary in this class, contrapposto. Contrapposto. So contrapposto is a big fancy word. I wouldn't even generally worry about memorizing it, but it's just a word that means your shoulders and your hips are going in opposite directions. So your hips are going one direction, your shoulders are going in another direction. There's a quick little doodle. So contrapposto is just the idea that these go in opposite directions. And what we're going to put on here, especially when you draw characters, when you look at figure drawing, is you should try to do this as much as possible. It's a really great way to draw figures, is to give them a little bit of this zigzag, kind of have their shoulders or their hips go in opposite directions. You're almost creating like this big letter Z kind of shape, right? I can't draw a Z, there we go. So we see that in this character. We see this character has shoulders going down in one direction and the hips are going up. And luckily, with Hopchi's work, we can even see, just like Zaya, this kind of underwear style pelvis. And so we can see how it's actually tilting. It's very obvious how it tilts. And it's more obvious because of the way the weight looks. So the long story short, for your character, for your figure drawing, is when you draw figures, you can draw figures just standing straight up and down. Especially for those of you that are beginners, that's great. You should be drawing stuff that's just straight up and down, kind of understand the really basic idea and go from there. Can make this a little bit bigger. So it's okay to do just this. But what you should encourage is a little bit of that tilt in the opposite direction. Gently tilt the shoulders one way. Gently tilt the hips another way. And what you're showing us when you tilt is you're also showing us a little bit of weight. And the most common idea with weight, meaning this, when we put weight into one side of the figure, we know that, or we see that because we see that one leg is usually straighter, the other one is more off to the side. And the clue at all times about where the weight is just where that hip is popping, which hip is the higher one. You can do that in your room again. Go in your room, go do it sometimes, stand up and lean to one side, and whichever side you lean to, you're straightening that leg out, you're popping that hip up, and that will give you that nice strong leg, and then your other leg is more for balance. And then of course, try that out when you're doing gestures with your arms. You can wave, you can hold something, you could be engaged with something, and imagine like how the angle of those shoulders work. So these are things that you will see in figure drawing, you'll see it in character design. Again, with this one that Rain did, not as much because this girl is genuinely very neutral, like staying just totally straight. Obviously, a lot of really interesting weight stuff on this one. For what it's worth, we'd say if we asked ourselves, hey, where's the weight in this picture? Hopefully we could see it's definitely right here. It's this flat heel driving all the weight down. This one's for balance. It's a lovely rhythm, right? It's like this lovely shape. And then, yeah, it's for balance. This is the one that has all the weight in it. And then finally with Zai's, of course, you don't technically have any weight because she's in the air. It's a little bit hard to do that. Okay, any quick questions about the up and down perspective, the contrapposto idea? If anyone's sketching a little bit of figure, feel free to copy paste it in the chat so we can check it out. But let's just quickly, if you can, if you've done that, go ahead. Otherwise, let's just quickly look at our preview for Friday. So for Friday, we are doing fabric. And I think I even have some old student assignments, which would be nice to look at real quick. Let me see if I have some. I do. November. Oh yeah, here we go. These are nice. So on Friday, we're going to be learning about drawing and painting fabric. So first we'll do a little intro to drawing fabric, which actually comes from Drawing Creative Practice. This is a handout that actually comes from the traditional drawing class, just because it's effective for the things I think about with drawing fabric. We've been doing the mannequin. The whole point of doing the mannequin, drawing figures, is we want to draw that and then stack clothing on top. So that's why we've been doing that for so long. We'll talk about dark colors, like dark and light colors, like how if you paint black clothing or white clothing, to always give it a little bit of a hue, like a little bit of a color. And then of course, we'll get some tips about painting fabric. And the goal would be that we're really invested and interested in painting outfits, not just like fabric on the ground or sitting somewhere, but really painting some outfits. And so here's some nice ones from previous students. Here's my student Tallulah, which I really enjoyed Tallulah's work because she would do like stylized characters, but then really respect the realistic part. In this case, like the realism of the fabric. So that's an excellent one. Let's see, here's my student Zara. This is a nice one. This is one of the reference pictures, I think, on the assignment. So it's a really nice example. Here's my student Milo. It's a very cool one, cool study of fabric. Very good student of mine, Anya. Here's Anya's kind of like trench coat idea. And then finally, I'll show, because I have one more I liked a lot. Here is my student. Here's my student Daniela, who used to make some really fantastic work. So yeah, we're going to be learning about painting fabric. We'll be learning about the drawing part and the painting as well. Yeah, very nice. Let me see if this copying, for some reason my copying wasn't working. No, let me see if I can put this on here. I don't know why my copy paste isn't working in Zoom. So sorry, but Nolan did put this in the Teams chat, so you guys should be able to see it. There's a nice mannequin in there, which looks great. So yeah, we'll be talking about drawing fabric, painting it. And then our goal is a pretty strong emphasis on fashion. I mean, like you can of course paint any type of realistic person you want, but we were really enjoying like street fashion, or like, in this case, it's kind of like some cool, almost like fantasy fashion. So that said, there's going to be pictures on Friday's assignment to choose from, but you can also choose your own picture as long as it's realistic. As long as it's a real photo of fabric, that's all that matters. But yeah, feel free to collect some pictures before Friday's class, so you have some preparation for the homework assignment. And of course, if you have questions about your picture, even better, you can bring those. All right, have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys on Friday. Take care. See you.